Hello, welcome to Make Kind Loud, conversations that turn up the volume. I am so excited. Today we are talking to Mase. I'm going to tell you all about him and then we're going to dive into it. So what's up, Mase? How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How you feeling?
I am fantastic. So Mase is a Black trans queer poet and educator based in Seattle by way of Philly. He is the author of If I Should Die Under the Knife, Tell My Kidney I Was the Fiercest Poet Around, as well as And Then I Got Fired, One Transqueer's Reflections on Grief, Unemployment, and Inappropriate Jokes About Death. As an educator, J. Mase speaks all over the country, educating communities, organizations, institutions, and companies on how to decrease the violence against transgender individuals, encouraging them to update their diversity and inclusion policies and improve the overall culture surrounding those who may not fit into the dominant paradigm of gender. So what's up, Mase? How are you?
Doing pretty good. Sitting here in the lovely land of Seattle today. So just got back here.
Oh yeah, you were in Detroit, right?
I was in Detroit and then Michigan and Michigan and then Houston and a few other places. So just kind of hanging out.
Yeah. So basically you travel all over doing talks at universities and such. So tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a lot of my work is through education, so doing lots of workshops, trainings, keynotes, things like that, but also through performance. So I do a lot of using the arts to preserve the culture, history, and legacy of Black trans people.
Okay, and then what made you want to be that educator that you are?
I'm laughing because so for myself, I think that a lot of times people ask, oh, well, how did you fall into this kind of career? And so the truth is, for myself, I, like many Black trans folks, got pushed out of 9-to-5 work. So for those that heard my bio just now, so I have this book out that's just kind of coming out. It'll be out next month, called And Then I Got Fired, and so it kind of details in there just some pieces around what does it mean for Black trans folks to consistently be antagonized, to be harassed?
Yeah.
And so I decided I didn't want to work for another person. I wanted to kind of work doing community work that I love with people I love and care about. So that's sort of how I got into it, and holding institutions and spaces accountable for the violence that they do and participate in. Yeah.
I love that. So you found that this was better for you as a fit, and now you're going out and educating other people about the importance of diversity and inclusivity, right?
I would say I wouldn't actually use those words. What I would say is that for myself, I give space for targeted communities to find the humanity in themselves. That there's a lot of times in which we get harassed consistently in workspaces or gaslit to think that something that's happening that causes us harm isn't happening. And so I like to imagine myself giving a reprieve for folks to say, like, hey, actually, for these next few hours, we're going to actually talk about you and the fact that what you're experiencing is true and how you're perceiving it is actually true. And you have a right to feel that way.
I love that. So gaslighting is a big thing.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So
all day, every day.
Right.
Yeah.
And to make you feel like you're going crazy, right?
Yeah, most definitely.
So explain what gaslighting is for the people.
Gaslighting is a tactic that abusers use and oppressive systems use in order to make you question your own experiences. So when I think about gaslighting in a work context or in other situations, it's microaggressions, right? And so it's this thing in which someone says, oh, you're really smart for a girl, right? Or you're really, when someone describes someone as being angry, but who is a Black person or a brown person, but when a white person has that same attitude at work, they're seen as authoritative, right? Or they're seen as discerning, or all those sorts of things. Those sorts of microaggressions. And if you were to talk about them as a Black person, as a queer person, as a trans person, someone would say, well, you're being irrational, right? And really, it's like, no, I'm actually observing after this body of years of evidence, right? That what I'm experiencing is this, right? And I just have more tools to talk about.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Thank you for that. So how do we bring humanity back to the people?
So one of the things...
how do we bring humanity back?
How do we bring humanity back? Well, did humanity leave? So I think that to me, sometimes we imagine this very cohesive world in which we see each other as human all the time. And so we consistently have been, for most of us, we've lived in this society in which systems were at place where some of us were simply dehumanized all the time, right? So there's this study out of UPenn, especially when I think about racial justice pieces and talking about that. There was a study out of a university that I'm gonna forget, so I'm not gonna say it on air like what it is, and then they come back like Mase lied about that. No, it didn't come from us. No, but so there's a study, and people can Google it, but it was talking about sticking needles in people's arms, specifically around skin tone. And it found that the darker skinned someone was, that white folks and other folks specifically stopped reacting physiologically to that person's pain, right? And so that's really big and important, because a lot of times we think sitting around having conversations is always going to be the thing that changes and shifts what people do, when in reality, some people are conditioned to never see other people as human. And so I think the first thing that people need to accept is the places in which they have been trained not to see other humans as human. Think about why that is. Think about, and also to work on faking the funk until they get there, right? So that to me is about redistribution of resources. It's about not minimizing the pain of targeted communities. And it's about being honest about spaces in which we need to relinquish power in certain situations.
I love that. And having the hard conversations, right?
Having the hard conversations with the follow-up action. Because I think, so for myself, coming from spaces around social services, I used to work in social services spaces, worked in academic spaces, and people in those spaces love to theorize about all kinds of stuff and then do nothing. They love to put together a 10-year plan that goes nowhere, right? Making sure at the end of your day, every single day, you actually did something to put money and resources into the hands of targeted communities, or to do something to legitimize and to affirm the leadership of targeted communities.
I love that, because you're right, and that goes with a lot of things. Like, people talk about a lot of stuff, right? How they have, like you just said, they put together this big 10-year plan. They have these grand ideas, but ideas are great and plans are amazing. However, if we don't do the work, then what's the point? What's the point of that? So
listen,
it's in the action. Go for it. Go for it.
No, I was gonna say, people just like to feel like they look like good people, right? So people oftentimes do things to reaffirm their capacity to seem like a good person without actually having to do anything.
Right. I put this plan together, so I'm a good person, but I'm not really going to do anything with it, though.
But on the real, I get so many inboxes from people that want to, especially whether it's cisgender straight folks or white folks, that specifically will hit me up and be like, oh, I've done all these things, and that really want me to pat them on the back for something. I'm just like, that's being a person. What you're telling me is you did a person thing today, but you want me to give you a cookie as if you did something special or more than what Black and brown folks are doing for themselves or trans people are doing for themselves, right? It's not possible.
Yeah. Right. I got you. My friends, I can't see the comments. I need to check why that is. But anyways, I have a couple of people on. Teresa, hello, Teresa, and Len. What's up? Thank you guys for joining. And everybody else, I cannot see your comments. I apologize, but the conversation is amazing. We're going to get in a little bit deeper. Stay with us. We are here to make sure that you guys are getting the information. I just wanted to acknowledge that I see you. I just cannot see your comments. So sorry about that. I just had to do that little disclaimer. So yeah, I totally agree with that. It's in people, like you just said, people want a pat on the back. They want to feel like they're doing something, but in all actuality, they're not. And so how do we bring, kindness into this? How do we bring healing into this?
So I have, I feel like I should have drawn it out. I have a very, this little diagram I sometimes use with people. And so the top of the diagram is a smiley face. The middle of the diagram is someone doing like just a face, and someone at the bottom is very angry, because I'm very technologically advanced. And so smiley faces are my number one way of communication. And so what I tell people is, often when we're talking about issues around social injustice or inequity, there's some people at the top of that spectrum who are like, oh, you told me there's a problem. I am so excited to help you fix this. I had no idea that there was even a problem. You have people in the middle who are usually kind of like, oh, there's a problem. You really still have to convince me about why it's a problem. But once you do this research, I'll potentially be swayed your way. And there's people at the bottom who are angry, right? And who are just like, I don't care that this is a problem for you. You're not worthwhile to me to fix this problem, right? And so a lot of times we prepare things for both sides of that sort of spectrum. And what we don't think about in our systems and our places in which we're doing work or we're gathering or in our neighborhoods, our families, all that kind of stuff, is that there's no such thing as neutrality, right? When we come to issues of injustice, right? And so that neutral place is usually still very much indebted to a system or a system that kind of harms other people. So a lot of my work also is trying to talk to people about politeness. And when you're thinking about being polite, are you being polite to a system of violence, or are you being polite to and considerate of people who are actually experiencing violence? So kindness to me is actually when you're encountering someone who's experiencing pain and maybe is angry while they're experiencing that, right? Or they're frustrated or sad or they're crying, or again, they're being projected onto about them being irrational, all these other things. Consider your actions afterwards. Is it that are you someone who is understanding why that person might be feeling all those feelings and why they might be dealing with this? Why you might be the millionth person that maybe mispronoun them, or the millionth person that denied them services at a place, or the millionth person that intentionally went out of their way to humiliate this person in public, which we know happens to trans folks all the time, where people intentionally do those things, right? Did you actually give space for that, or did you tell that person to settle down, or that they shouldn't be so angry, or that, well, you're just following what the rules of the organization are, right? So kindness to me is thinking about people first, and institutions.
I love that. So that empathy is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's important. Like when you first started talking, you said politeness. Are you using the politeness for what's happening, or just, the institution that's doing it? And I think that's important because everybody goes through something, right? Yeah. Everybody has to deal with something. But if we don't have that human level, that human capacity, that empathy, then how do we grow as humans? How do we grow as people? Because everybody is going through something, and it might not be the same situation as me. It might not be the same situation as you. However, everybody's going through something. And if we can lead with love and step forward in kindness with empathy at the top of the mind, then I think we could change a lot of what's happening in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think even to me, I think so, yes.
Yeah, bring it. Yeah, go for it.
I was still thinking about another study. And again, I'm not mentioning the universities. I have to go back and look at my notes. I ain't going to lie to y'all. Like, oh, it came from this. It's just been a long time since I read it. So there was this one other place that was talking about the brainstem, and this doctor was talking about the brainstem and said, typically, when someone has a brainstem injury, that what doctors and medical professionals will tell you is that this injury is not going to heal. And so what the doctor was saying is not that it's not going to heal, it's just that the cells are going to regenerate so slowly, it's not going to matter in your lifetime, right?
Right.
And sometimes I do question that around empathy, that if I've been taught someplace, right, that thing, because even when we think about doing certain types of education work, I find that a lot of times people learn new words, but not necessarily new actions. And when they do learn new actions, did they actually use the action, right? There's a friend of mine, so I don't know. I saw her comment earlier on something related to this. So I don't know if she's watching right now. But so my friend Erin Lang, who has this phrase, inclusion is not the goal. This is something she says, is inclusion is not the goal. And so part of that, when I meditate on that, is I find lots of people who work on trying to include people into other people's dreams, but not actually recognizing the story of other people. Because again, if I can have these people around me, I can make myself look like a good person. I can use these people to situate myself versus actually saying like, hey, actually, in order to create spaces in which things are equitable, the cultural space needs to change, right? The ways we speak to each other at work needs to change. The ways that we talk about justice needs to change. The ways that, right? And the ways that we show up around how even we delegate power has to change, right? And most people I find aren't really ready for that, but they are ready for a book, you know, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it could be the fact that because everyone has to do their own individual work, right? So they're not ready for that because they're not ready to look inside to see how you're a part of the problem instead of the solution, right? And so I agree with that, and I think it's just the conversations. It's just, and it's tiring. I know it's tiring, but at the same time, if we're not having those hard conversations with people, then how do we break through whatever the block is, you know?
I think part of me, and so I bought a little puppy. I'm about to go give her something a little bit because she's like getting a little now. But
like,
she's trying to have a conversation too. But so to me, one of the things that I think about is like, how can people? I want people who have certain types of power. So I want around racial justice. I actually sometimes want white folks to think less and to trust more, right? So actually, you don't actually have to imagine that, because you ain't going to understand your entire life. You are not going to understand what it means to live as a Black or brown person in the United States of America or anywhere in your life. It's just, you're not going to get there, right? So instead of trying to spend most of your resources and time on that, trust Black and brown leadership more, right? If someone says, donate here, do this thing here, show up here, just do it. Don't worry about understanding. Around trans issues, don't sit here if you are a cisgender person and a non-trans person and act like you're going to get all transness in your lifetime. You ain't gonna get it. Don't even worry about that. Worry about believing and trusting, because that too is a part of empathy. Believing that you're smart enough to be believed, right? Believing that you're intelligent enough about your experiences for my actions to be transformed by your presence and by what you're actually needing.
Oh, yeah. That's a word right there. That's definitely a word. So let's go back to the quote your friend said. What inclusion is not
the goal. Yeah.
Inclusion. So unpack that for me a little bit. What does that mean? Inclusion is not the goal.
So inclusion again. So let's say we're working with it. So, and for me, I'm going to take it to nonprofits or something like that.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So I think about nonprofits, especially like social services and other sort of things, in which cases a lot of social services exist in this country, and we don't talk about this, but a lot of social services exist in this country because Black and brown folks weren't trusted to take care of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
That in many ways we were like, we had resources taken, we had labor taken, and still do, right? All these things. And so we create these systems to keep lots of people who are supposed to be seen as subservient in check, right? Including me into a system that never was designed for me to thrive or flourish is not actually about my survival. It's about the system's survival, right? And so what a world looked like in which we actually just showed up for and redistributed the resources that were taken from Black and brown communities, right? What would it actually look like if we thought about a world that existed without that kind of ongoing theft of labor, right? So that's what about inclusion is not the goal, and I kind of meditate on that, is that inclusion is usually about upholding systems that are invested in causing harm, right? Even if we reframe that, still minimizing versus actually getting rid of the harm.
Right. So breaking those systems down totally. And it goes back to, we may not see that in our lifetime, but if we start building now, then in 100 years, they may be able to benefit from the work that you're doing, from the work that people are finally coming to realize that, yes, we need to start over, basically. So okay, I got you. So instead of saying inclusivity, it's still the framework and it's still the mindset of today. We need to break that down, and because we don't want to be included in the framework that's already set, because the framework is faulty.
The framework is faulty, right? So so thinking a lot about how do we just how do we actually acknowledge that? How do we
I mean, it's a lot, especially if you're conditioned, especially if you've been imprinted this way. And I believe that everyone has a choice, and the simple choice is to do or not to do, right? So to be kind or not to be kind, to show up or don't show up, to listen or not. Literally, those are the choices, to be or not to be. And so the question is, what are you choosing? And if you really want to see change, if you really want to see the world become a better place, then it has to start with you and your beliefs. And then what are you going to do when someone challenges those beliefs?
Because I think even this using the word kindness, like I think around kindness, like I think a lot of times people think of that and think kindness has to be like soft, right? Kindness means that we all have to get
Right.
along. Kindness is like, yo, like again, you causing harm. You gotta sit your butt down. Like while we handle some stuff. Actually, again, disrupting harm, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is kindness. Right? Kindness is not acting like something isn't happening because it makes you feel bad to admit what you've done
Right.
or participated in, right? It's not possible.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that because when I first started my kindness journey, people are like, "Well, you're not weak," and that took me back. And I was like, "Well, why is kindness equated with weakness when kindness is so? You have to be so strong. You have to be so grounded because people can go off however they go off, right? But in order to foster change, in order to facilitate those hard conversations, we have to be open to the different perspectives of everybody and not just listen to reply, but listen to understand. I may not, I will never know what Mase has experienced in his life. However, I can listen and I can try to be better in order to make this world a better place. But if I'm only listening to reply and I'm only listening to be like, okay, well, yeah, however, but you know what I mean, then that's not really fostering the change. And we have to look inward in order to do that. And that is hard it was hard for me when I started my kindness journey because my default was sarcasm. My default was like, oh, if you have something, right? If you have something to say, I got something to say too. You know what I mean? But it was the looking inside and saying, okay, if I am truly going to be a beacon of light, and if I am truly wanting kindness to be a force, then I need to do the work on myself. And I think people, that's just what needs to be done. And if we just keep chipping away at it, eventually, hopefully, prayerfully, that will happen.
And so even thinking about right, because even and I'm thinking especially because also a lot of my work is in faith community stuff too, right? So even thinking about prayerfully, sometimes people, yeah, for me sometimes people often excuse themselves so much
Yeah,
because
no, for real, that's real talk. Yeah,
not also realizing their faith community is also perpetuating lots of violence or continue
very
to, right?
true. Yeah,
Theology that many of us have learned, like when we think about how we've learned to pray or how we've learned to do certain things, even be able to question our theology of, is this a theology of survival for targeted communities, or was this a theology of, right, of white supremacy? Is this a theology of ableism? Is this a theology of classism? Is it a theology that taught you not to question authority ever, even when it was doing harm to someone that you loved and cared about, right?
yeah,
And so
yeah,
even thinking about as we meditate on kindness, as we pray over kindness, as we ask for kindness,
yeah,
and invite that into our spirit. Also, being cognizant of the ways in which we've learned to resonate, just resonate with kindness and what that means, right? And the
yeah.
implications. Mhm.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, Mace, listen, this has been an amazing conversation. I appreciate you. I appreciate the work that you're doing. Keep doing it because it's conversations like these that, maybe someone is going to hear something that was said in these last 25 minutes that will allow them to be like, okay, what can I do? And it not inclusion, but literally breaking down those frameworks and rebuilding and starting over. And so I thank you for all that you're doing. And I appreciate everything that you're doing as well.
Most definitely. And thank you for having me here. And I'm so excited to chat with you and I'm excited to stay in conversation with you.
Fantastic. Well, from my heart to yours, this has been Make Kind Loud, conversations turn up the volume. I would like to thank Mase for joining us and just giving us all kinds of information to think about and to meditate on, and how we can bring humanity back into everything that we do. And so it's important for all of us to do the work. It's important for all of us to look inside and see how we can reframe our own mentalities. So thank you again, Mase. Just tune in next week. We're going to have another guest talking about important issues in regards to how we can make this world a better place, because it is up to each and every one of us. So thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you soon.